Okay, let's start with some good news and some bad news. Number one, American kids are getting dumber every year, and that's not just because of COVID and lockdowns. According to the nation's report card for both public and private schools, that's the bad news, and we've got to do something about it. The good news is that majority of Americans are actually agreeing on more things. Okay, so almost 60% of Americans, more than half of all Americans, agree that grocery prices are very much a major factor in how they are going to vote this election. And they agree that the current president is not doing a good job and strongly disapprove of his current work. And this big one is almost 60%, it's about 58 or 59%, believe that the biggest threat to democracy isn't one party or another party, it's the media. All those things that Americans are agreeing on, education, inflation, grocery prices, lack of trust in media, and disapproval of the current administration are big factors in another thing that Americans, I think, agree on, the midterm elections. It seems to me that most Americans agree that the midterm elections are the biggest sports event of this year. To me, it's a sport. It's a race. It's many races, and it's already in your backyard. You cannot avoid it. So let's get into the numbers and the money being poured into these races and see who is likely to cross the finish lines and what may get in the way. Thank you for joining me on the Today with Kay show. My name is Kay Rubacek. Let's get into this. How is your coffee supply? Is your coffee really 100% organic and roasted right here in the USA? Freedom First Coffee is. It's a gourmet coffee roasted in Victorian-era roasters in the heartland of the US. Their tagline is, tastes like freedom. I don't know what flavor freedom really is for you, but I can say that it tastes great, and I do drink it myself. So why don't you give it a try? Go to freedomfirstcoffee.com and use the promo code K, that's K-A-Y, for a discount, and to support this show. I like to say we vote with our dollars, so buying your coffee from Freedom First Coffee is a delicious way to vote for freedom. And if you already have your own favorite coffee, don't worry, because you can buy me a virtual coffee. Go to my website, kayrubacek.com. That's RUBACEK.com. Click on Coffee with Kay. You can buy me a virtual coffee to help keep this show going, support independent creators like myself. Every coffee counts, and I promise I will drink one and think of you. So the 2022 midterm elections are just a few weeks away. Well, 2 weeks away, and things are getting crazy. I like to say this is kind of like the Olympics. You know, it really isn't anything like a presidential election. And I'm an Australian living in America. I've been here for 12 years, so I kind of feel like a little bit of an outsider looking in on these races and these sports. And I like to think, it's not like a presidential election. I see a presidential election as more like the Super Bowl. This is more like the Olympics. In Australia, we have a very famous race. You may have heard of it, the Melbourne Cup. It's a horse race. And this is where everyone around the nation, in the whole country, we all bet on which horse is going to win. The whole nation stops for this race. We call it the race that stops the nation. Now, there isn't really any sport like that in America. Horse racing, rodeos aren't that big. And so I really think these midterm elections are more like the Olympics because there are just races happening all over the country. And the bets on these runners are big. This is a big business. You follow the money. Billions of dollars are being invested to get these candidates elected. We're going to follow the money today. Now, in the Melbourne Cup race in Australia, the winner takes home $8 million. Okay. There's a lot more at stake in this race here in the US. Things are bigger in America as people Well, it's what we say in Australia. What's at stake for this race is power and influence and money and money. If everyone was just altruistic and really there just for we the people, it would be different. But we got to keep a count on that. If you control legislation, if you have oversight on industries that you may also happen to invest in maybe inappropriate ways, and people shouldn't do that, right? But we know people do, and we need that to stop. So I'm sure there are good candidates who are not there for the money and the power, who are there for the people. Those are the people I'm looking for. But there are, this is big business. This is big money. But what I want to show you today, what I found really inspiring, was that this isn't all about the money. And that's what we're going to look at too. So first, for those of you who need a reminder of the rules of the race, I needed a reminder because, I don't remember all of my political lessons, and I should know exactly how many senators there are and how many House of congressional members are in the country. Do you know? Do you know how many? You should know it off the top of your head. Don't leave these facts to someone else. You are responsible in a republic in America. So there are hundreds of races happening all over the nation. At the federal level, there's senators and there's House representatives being voted for. At the state level, there's the governors or the gubernatorial race. Now, why? Why do we call it gubernatorial? It's such an awkward word. So I looked it up. It's from the Latin verb gubernare or gubernator. It sounds kind of funny. I am the gubernator, one who governs. It's really only in the US that gubernatorial is used. So I'm going to practice that word. That's what we're supposed to say. So the gubernatorial races, each state has its own rules. Now, looking at the federal level, there are 435 congressional districts in the US. Seats for the House of Representatives. It's kind of a done deal. You look at the numbers, you look at the polling, it's going to turn red, it's going to go Republican. What's going to happen after it turns red, after the election? Well, I'll get into that in a moment. The Senate. So 1/3 of senators are up for re-election every 2 years. So only 1/3 this year up. And the current Senate is pretty unusual. Someone described it as being balanced on a pinhead. I love that. Vice President Kamala Harris is that pinhead of power because the power of the Senate is right now 50 Republicans and 50 Democrats, and Kamala Harris is the only deciding vote. It's kind of unusual. It hasn't been that way very often, and it really is highlighting how divided things are. Now, if you look back over history, pre-1945, it was mostly Republicans that had the general control. 1945 to 1996, it was the Democrats who controlled Congress and the Supreme Court. Since 1996, it's been back and forth. If you've read my book, Nowhere Left to Run, 10 Steps to Survive Tyranny Today, you know that I talk about there being larger strategies at play beyond just what we see at the party level. There's bigger strategies at play. So to understand what's going on around us, yes, we need to look at what's happening with the Republicans, what's happening with the Democratic Party, but we also need to go deeper. If you haven't read my book, please go to my website. It's kayrubacek.com. That's KAYRUBACEK.com. You can download my new book for free, Nowhere Left to Run, 10 Steps to Survive Tyranny Today. And I talk about tyranny. I talk about going behind the parties, looking bigger at the bigger picture, and I give solutions on how to empower yourself when everything seems like you have no power and that there's these bigger powers at play. Sometimes we're too scared to look at the bigger powers at play because it makes us feel hopeless or helpless. The reason I wrote my book is because I just found so much evidence and research in my own and also own work and also others' works that that's not true. We have more power than anyone wants us to believe. And that is also true in the election, in this big race going on right now here all across the nation of America. I am not a sports reporter, but I'm going to do my best. We are going to get into this right now. Well, almost right now. Let's take a short ad break first. Are you interested in investing in gold to secure your finances? If you've been listening to any conservative podcast over the past few years, you would have heard plenty of ads for gold investment, and it is popular and it is important. And if you're thinking about it but haven't done it yet, there's still time. With the way the economy is looking right now, we need to do whatever we can to stay ahead of the coming recession. Now, I recommend you go and talk to Ira at ourgoldguy.com. Mention my name and he'll give you sound advice. Make your own opinion. Go to his website, ourgoldguy.com, and take a look at the articles he publishes there, the information he's putting out. See if it resonates with you. I think you'll be glad that you did, that you talked to him. Talk to Ira at ourgoldguy.com and see if he is someone you want to work with to invest in gold. There's currently 4 states that will decide the fate of the United States Senate. That's what I'm focusing on today, and I'll tell you why. First up, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Nevada. They are the toss-up states. The current power structure of the safe states is safe states. Look at this map. The Republicans are in a better position. They've got 49 safe seats. They only need 2 seats to regain a majority of the Senate. Everyone's got an opinion. Okay, and I'm going to tell you where I get my opinions from because I think you should know. I'm biased. Everyone has a bias. And so I'll tell you where I get my information from. Multiple sources. Trafalgar Group, they are center-right. I like their charts. I'm a visual person. I like looking at charts. It really helps. Some of them have better charts than others. Rasmussen Reports, center-right. Right up front on their homepage, there's a daily presidential tracking poll sponsored by Miranda Devine's Laptop from Hell. I've read that book. Amazing book. Everyone should read it. Now, the fact that that book is sponsoring the daily presidential tracking poll tells you a bit about this company. Anyway, Project 538, they lean very liberal. You can see here they're already calling Pennsylvania, which is a highly, highly contested state. It's a very important state. It's always got troubles with its elections. Why is that right up the front on this poll? Well, you've got to ask that question. Real Clear Politics. They're an aggregate of a lot of other sources. They do lean liberal. Generally polling is more liberal. It's kind of like the mainstream media. It is definitely more liberal. Now, this website, 270towin.com, has fun maps. This is very cool. You can play with the numbers. Great job, 270 to win. Thank you very much for this cool tool. Okay, so let's start with Nevada. It looks like it's the easiest path for Republicans to get to 50-50. No one was really paying too much attention to Nevada before. Incumbent Democrat Senator Catherine Marie Cortez Masto has generally been pretty quiet in the media. She is falling behind Republican challenger, the former Nevada Attorney General Adam Laxalt. Cortez is down an average 5 to 6 points. It doesn't seem like she's going to be able to swing that. I think that that's going to flip red. I think that Laxalt's going to win. Now look at the money here. So if you look at open secrets following the money in politics, the Democrat senator has raised over $38 million, where her Republican challenger has raised only $13 million. Okay, when you think about that, the Democrat is behind by 5 to 6 points, but she's fundraised him out by almost 3 to 1. What's that saying? Money isn't everything. You cannot buy the race. Certainly not always. Okay, so don't let money stop you. If you haven't seen my interview episode that I did this week with with Bob and Dorothy Byerly, they're running in Pennsylvania, 139th district, and how little money they spent to really make some move in their district. It shows you money isn't everything. I love looking at these numbers. You can click here on contributors for Catherine Cortez Masto. University of California, Blackstone Group, interesting. Amazon.com, interesting. Comcast, University of Nevada, all right. Who's paying for Adam Laxalt? Kirkland and Ellis, Blackstone Group. $49,400 for Musto, and for Laxalt is $20,000. Interesting. Okay, let's go to Arizona. Arizona is really contentious. Okay, it has been a virtual toss-up for the entire election season. The race is between the Democrat incumbent and former astronaut. I mean, that's kind of cool. There's an astronaut, Mark Kelly. He is leading in the polls 2 to 3 points on average over the Republican challenger, who is a business owner, Blake Masters. Look at the numbers. This is shocking to me. The incumbent Senator Mark Kelly, he's already in power. He's fundraised over $75 million, whereas Blake Masters has only fundraised not even $10 million. So you mean to tell me that the Democrat incumbent is only leading by 3 points, and he outspent by almost 7 times? That's a lot of money. I believe Mark Kelly is going to win, barely by 1%. We shall see. There's likely to be polling issues that may not be resolved for days after election. And Arizona, Georgia, it's always seemed to have some sort of election issues. I don't know. I would love to say it's going to be a fair and honest election full of integrity, full of transparency, but we got to be realistic. Politics is a dirty business. If you bring up election integrity, what are you called now? Now the new term, there's a new label, election denier. Maybe it's not new, but it's as if only 2020 and Trump and MAGA Republicans can be labeled election deniers. I mean, come on, seriously. This is people acting dumb and thinking that we're dumb. This is just super short-term memory. What about all the elections before 2020 where Democrats were the election deniers? I mean, come on. We really should not be falling for these labels. If you look at this article, USA Today was quoting from an article by The Atlantic where they're defining what is an election denier. They do say it is a loaded term. Yeah, it certainly is. But how they are defining election denier is only about 2020. They're trying to make us think that no one ever denied an election result prior to 2020, as if 2020 was the first time ever. It was the first time that a lot of Republicans woke up and said, oh, something's not right. But it's not the first time that anyone claimed election fraud or problems with election integrity. Anyway, that's my little rant for this. We should be able to talk about this. It's still a sensitive topic, but thank goodness I'm on Rumble. If you are on Rumble, please like, subscribe, share. If you're on YouTube, please go to Rumble. But if you prefer YouTube, fine. Click the like, subscribe button. And if you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please give a 5-star review. Or no review. Better to give 5-star or none. But if you want to give a review, please give 5-star, because that's just how the algorithms work. And they show the shows that have 5-star reviews to new audiences. So that helps me a lot more than just giving a lesser review. And I'll never be offended if you're not happy with the show. But hey, you've watched this far. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Okay, Georgia. There's a lot of attention on the Georgia Senate race. It's the only race in the country where both candidates are African American. Awesome. Over 1 million people have already voted in early voting. That's really high. Generally, it's the Democrats that vote early and Republicans that vote on the day. It's kind of like a general thing. The incumbent Democrat U.S. Senator is Raphael Warnock, and his leading Republican challenger, Herschel Walker, roughly 1 to 3 points. The polls are all over the place. It's really hard to nail down who's going to win. I think one important factor, in my opinion, is infighting inside the Republican Party. The Republican, Brian Kemp, is running for re-election as governor. Seems like he doesn't really support Herschel Walker that much. Walker is a Trump guy. Kemp isn't. Guys, you got to get it together for the people, not for yourselves. It's silly stuff being divided like that. You look at how, certainly in the socialist agenda, you got to put the party first. That's what they do. They align, they pull all the money. They don't care about infighting. They put their agenda, their ideology at the top. I think that's harmful when the agenda and ideology is socialist and it's going really against the American Constitution, in my opinion. Imagine if another party could get together and stop the infighting and really put the Constitution first and getting back to basics, getting back to what made this nation great, and really putting that above petty internal politics. I think we'd see a whole lot more strength happening. But anyway, that's just my opinion. So looking at the money, what's interesting is that incumbent Warnock is only up 0.5% over the other guy. And that just proves he's really not doing very well. Just the numbers are kind of crazy just to think that we are spending this much money on these races. Who is investing in this? Click on the contributors. $255,000 from the University of California and $122,000 from Emory University. Stanford University, $83,000. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Is that a conflict of interest? The U.S. government. Is that a conflict of interest? University of Maryland, $59,000. University of Washington, $57,000. City University of New York, $56,000. State of California, $56,000, all going to the Georgian, the Democratic candidate in Georgia for Senate. Wow. Herschel Walker, Republican. I'm not seeing any universities here. Wow, and his list is a lot shorter. His top donation there, $47,000. You compare that to $255,000 from the University of California. That's just amazing. And he's barely winning. Money isn't everything, folks. I predict that Georgia will have a very close race. It could flip either way. I am predicting that there is likely to be polling issues that will not get resolved for days after the election, and that I would say that the U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock will just barely win by less than 0.5%. There's been a lot of concern about voting in Georgia, a lot for a while. It's not, don't think it's just 2020. Don't be fooled by this, new label of election denier for 2020. The issue is much bigger than that. Pennsylvania. Oh, this is a really uncomfortable U.S. Senate race. I live on the border of Pennsylvania, very close, and I love Pennsylvania. Really green, really beautiful. Now, the current Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor is John Fetterman, and he's running against former TV personality and medical doctor, Dr. Mehmet Oz. You must have heard about this by now. They had their one and only debate was last night. So the polls are showing that Fetterman is leading by an average of 2 to 4 points. But it's weird because most Democrats haven't wanted to debate in this election at all. Kind of insulting to think that people don't want to publicly debate. And finally, in Pennsylvania, they did agree It was Fetterman who didn't want to debate, but he had a fair reason not to debate. He had a stroke in May this year. The Liberal media didn't want to talk about this before. Not too long ago, an NBC reporter who did her job, she interviewed Fetterman, and then she told the truth. She said that Fetterman had obvious trouble with his comprehension when they were just making small talk. She could see there was cognitive problems. She brought that up in her report, and she was heavily criticized. But now it can't be hidden anymore. That debate went out publicly this week. If you haven't seen it, you can watch it online. It's all very obvious. Now the media cannot avoid talking about it. They called it unwatchable. They called it painful. Now, I've got nothing against anyone with an impairment wanting to run for as a government representative, but we expect someone to have their mental fitness with them, and to be putting that as a priority. You need to take care of yourself no matter who you are. And if you want to represent a whole state or something, you need to be looking after your health. I think that's a basic requirement, in my opinion. And having a mental fitness, mental capacity, you are being a role model for your state when you take on this role as a representative. So I feel it's really important. Why didn't the Liberal media want to ask questions about a candidate's mental fitness, a Democratic candidate's mental fitness, their comprehension ability? If they had called out Fetterman as being mentally impaired, they may also have to call out the current sitting president's obvious impairments when we see he has some troubles speaking. So often it's something that just can't be hidden. It's there. He's in a public position. We see the speeches, we hear the words, and they're often not comprehensible. Too often. They don't want to bring that up. The Liberal media are not bringing that up because why? Because they are following the same agenda. And that's why people say to me, why is it that they just seem so silly that they won't call out what's right in front of their faces? Well, because they're not divided. They're putting agenda, ideology above logic, above reason, above rationality. This is very common. Well, this is how socialists work. Absolutely. It's this real groupthink where you must put the party first. Look at China. My goodness, top example of socialism in action. All media must put the party line first. They have to lie. Yes, that is their job. They know it. They do it. All officials, they have to lie. Yes, that's just part of the deal. They know it. They must put the party above everything. When you put ideology, you put the party line above everything. That's how they can justify ignoring things that to us seem like blatantly obvious and ridiculous to ignore. But back to the Pennsylvania race. So this is one of the more financially fair elections compared to all the others we've seen, right? Where the Democrats had raised far, far more and were barely, with very little return on that. My guess is that Fetterman's going to win, probably just less than 1%. Now, Dr. Oz isn't from Pennsylvania. He's from New Jersey. That's likely to hurt his chances. There's likely to be election issues. Election issues. I don't like using a euphemism, but, we've got to get better terms for this. I'm not an election denier. I just like transparency. And when there's a lack of it, I question it. Keep an eye on the Senate race in New Hampshire. The Democrat incumbent, Maggie Hassan, is only leading by an average of 3 points, and she has over 30 million raised compared to the military veteran Don Bolduc, having raised only 1.5 million. I mean, that's embarrassing. 30 times more she has raised, and she's just barely winning. This is money doesn't buy everything. So my big takeaway from the race of the year is follow the money. If the money was required to be equal for fundraising on all candidates, I mean, these guys wouldn't stand a chance. They're, 3, 10, 7 times more they're fundraising, and they're using that to get ahead. To me, this says, seriously, your vote, your brain, your action matters so much more than your dollar. I still say vote with your dollar, put it in the right place where according to your values. Use it wisely. But if all of these elections were just about money and power, these guys would win hands down. But really, it's not. It's not. Yes, there's corruption. Yeah, sure. But money isn't enough. Still relies on us, on you, on me. Remember that money isn't everything. Money cannot buy your brain, your rationality. And what will happen after the election? Well, a lot of people are saying this. Republicans are going to take the House. That's a given. Then Kevin McCarthy will become the new speaker. That'll be interesting. He's going to launch subpoenas, impeachment for border issues. Hunter Biden for China-Ukraine. Fauci to answer for his role in all of the COVID crimes. How aggressive will the Republicans be? Well, they can't blame everything on Trump anymore, can they? They have no one to blame right now. So I think they're going to have to get less divided if they really want to put their policies in place. People got to come together. Stop putting party politics above we the people. Please download my book, Nowhere Left to Run, 10 Steps to Survive Tyranny Today, if you haven't already. Don't put your fate in the hands of big government or party lines. You have control over yourself. That's what I talk about in my book. Download it for free from my website, kayrubacek.com. You have been watching the Today with Kay show. Thank you for joining me on this special sports edition. I'll see you next week.